At least we're so close to the charbroiled oysters. I got to go get some of those earlier. I really want to thank Gary and the board members of the Port and all the staff that works for the Port of New Orleans for why we're here today. And of course, as we reflect on the 10-year anniversary of Katrina, the first thing we do is we remember more than 1,800 lives lost. 1,877 is the number that most people peg as the number of people throughout the Gulf Coast region that lost their lives through that storm. And of course, so many of those, the vast majority of those, were right here in the city of New Orleans. And we think about them, but they also serve as an inspiration for what we decided to do after as a community. And that is, the people in New Orleans didn't say we're going to just sit around and feel sorry for ourselves. We said we're actually going to pick ourselves up and we're going to rebuild. And we're not just going to rebuild what we had before, we're going to rebuild better than what we had before. We're going to start confronting the problems that in many ways were being ignored by this whole region before. And the people of New Orleans are the ones that made that happen. The people of New Orleans are the ones that demanded better. And I think one of those great examples, one of those things that we celebrate, is the resiliency and the strength of the people of the Port of New Orleans. Because the value of the Port of New Orleans has never been lost on us. In fact, it's this very spot right here that back in 1803, the United States government said, we are going to acquire this land because it's so vital for the United States to be able to grow as a nation, to have access to the Port of New Orleans. And along the way, they came up with a pretty good deal at about $15 million to double the size of the nation. Still turned out to be a good deal looking back at it today. But the whole reason for the Louisiana Purchase was because of the importance and the value of the Port of New Orleans. Still, the lower Mississippi is the largest port system in the entire world. And so when you had this devastation, you had so many people that were displaced, so many people that were wondering whether or not they were going to be able to come back, and what would they have to come back to. The port said, we're going to reopen. We're going to figure out how to get it done. Didn't wait around for everybody else to come up with a plan. They came up with their own plan, working with federal partners. You know, you had the Coast Guard involved in that. Of course, one of the great stories of Katrina that doesn't get told enough is the fact that the Coast Guard saved more than 33,000 lives in those days after Katrina. More than 33,000 lives. Still the greatest recovery effort in the Coast Guard's history. Literally pulling people off of rooftops, saving people that would have otherwise died. So our federal partners have stepped up to make this happen, to bring the Port of New Orleans back. But we're all working together with a single goal. And within 2 weeks, in less than 2 weeks, the port was reopened. It took MARAD bringing in vessels, over 1,500 dock workers that had no place to live. Houses were destroyed. They were all displaced all around the country. But you had to find some place to keep people while they were rebuilding their house to come back to work, to get the port going again. And so MARAD came in and brought vessels docked over here so that people would have a place to stay. It was like floating dormitories. But it worked. It was a creative way to figure out how to just get things going again. And then the Corps worked with NOLA and other agencies to rechart the Mississippi, to clear the debris along the Mississippi, to go and have to redredge parts of the Mississippi so that you could finally get commerce moving again and get people back to work. And it was important not just to South Louisiana, it was important to the entire nation that the port was reopened. So today I know we're reflecting on a lot of things that are the successes of the horrible tragedy. And really the successes are all about the resiliency of the people. All of the great things that happened after were hard fought. We wish we didn't have to go through the things we went through after the storm, but at least when we decided we were going to rebuild, we said we're going to go and fix those things that were broken. And we were over at some of the schools earlier. I'm going to introduce my colleague and our newest senator, Bill Cassidy, who was with us earlier at Warren Easton High School with President Bush and First Lady Laura Bush. And we were talking about some of the things that happened to bring the school system back, but again, not to bring the school system back that we had before. It's one of the most failed, corrupt systems in the entire nation. But to actually rebuild it differently and better, to where now the New Orleans public school system is the model for how to transform urban education in the nation. And it didn't happen by itself. It happened because people demanded it. The people of New Orleans, the strong and resilient people.